In 1983, I was babysitting my niece, and she was about 3 years old. And my sister, 10 years my senior, went to work early in a cab. And I was asleep from being tired. I was smoking weed the night before with this guy, my friend down the street. And I awoke to a naked man who I knew in the neighborhood from being an older brother of one of my classmates. And I look over at my niece who's sleeping next to me, and the reason why I woke was because back in the day we had waterbeds. And when you put weight on a waterbed, for all of you who don't know, it makes this sound, and it's a gurgly sound, and it also wakes you up because it's jostling you to some degree, right? And you feel like you're on a boat. And so that's what I woke up to. And I was so confused because he didn't have any clothes on, but he had these black shorts that were nearby, you could tell they were little because they were so small, right? And he had climbed in the bed with us like he was a boyfriend of mine or something. And I look over at my niece and she is dead, out cold. And I had to think really quick. And in my mind, I pictured it. I'm going to run next door. I'm going to get help from the landlord's son who lives next door with his wife. And this guy's going to get out of there and that guy's going to grab him and they're going to call the police. And I mapped it out in my mind. And that's not how it worked out. I left my niece there unintentionally. I never heard the end of this from my sister afterwards, but I left my niece there. And I know it sounds awful, but that was my first reaction, was to bail. And I could feel myself airborne over the waterbed, because on a waterbed, once again, if you don't know what it is, you can't bounce like you would off of a mattress. So I had to precariously hit the frame on the side and jump off of the bed, land on the concrete floor, the tile floor, and run out the front door. And I banged on the neighbor's door, and no one was home. I screamed, and in Hawaii, there's apartments right next door to each other, and there's always older people walking around in the morning, somebody walking their dog, and there was absolutely no one on the street, no one on the sidewalk, no one home, and I am screaming, God, help me. There's a naked man in my house. There's a naked man. Help, 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 help. So I see a dumpster across the street at a friend's house. She's my classmate, like a cousin, and I know that parking lot well. So I hide behind this dumpster because I don't know what else to do. And I'm watching the driveway of the apartment complex across the street so I can see what's going on, if my niece is coming out. And she doesn't come out, but I see him come out. And he has those little black shorts I saw on the bed. He had them on, and he had Vans on. I'll never forget this. I was so young. I'm 55, and I can still remember him. And he was profusely sweating, you could tell. And he had like blonde hair on his chest, and he was half bald, and he was panicking, looking up and down the street to see if anyone saw him. And he turned right, which was my left, and he ran and darted, and he did not have my niece with him. And that was the main thing that I observed. And so I ran back across the street knowing he left, because I hadn't seen anyone in this little apartment on the way out of that bedroom. So there was no one with him, no accomplice with him. He came in. I did notice the jealousies, those glass louvers on the floor. He had removed them carefully, not breaking them, and had opened the screen and popped the screen open. And that's how he climbed into the house, because it was on the ground floor. So I get back to the apartment, and there's my cute little niece with blonde hair, and she's rubbing the sleep out of her eyes. And she calls me Auntie Kimmy. And she asked why I left her. Well, she didn't mention the man, but she didn't understand why she was in the house alone and why I was screaming outside and like coming in. And so I had to come in, grab her, secure the premises. And at the time there were no cell phones. So I had to call Hawaiian Telephone, which was Hawaiian Telcom, or became Hawaiian Telcom. My sister was a zero operator, and I had to get her off the switchboard. They had these big switchboards back then at Hawaiian Telcom, and she had to hurry up and catch the cab, call the police first. The police came. And from there is a part two, but this is where the trauma with the sexual abuse, the scare inside, the fear of seeing that, and you being young and not knowing if you should, like, the first thing that comes to your mind is, I must run and get help. Not, I'm going to get a knife and go after this guy, because in your mind you're like, oh my God, I have to protect the child plus myself, but I have to lure him, I guess, from the child is what I was trying to do. And so when the police came, they actually opened up an attempted rape case, and it became bigger than I thought it was. And it was awful. There was court proceedings and everything that went on for up to a year. This thing was really bad, and I had to explain to the judge, and they did put him away, and my sister was notified because she was my guardian at the time. So every time he was released from prison, he went in and out of prison often, and he was a sexual predator who was registered in the sex registration, the database, right? And so my sister and I had to go through this thing that day where, but they asked if he did anything. And I said, no, I don't recall any of that. Like, he didn't ever do anything to me sexually. I got away in time. So they did they didn't do DNA and things like that, but they took, the sketch, all the description that was there. It was a big case. And then I had another cousin come over, the sister to that cousin I spoke of earlier. And she asked if I want to go out and party to get over the feeling of that whole incident.